You mentioned that one of the last times we talked, you said that you hop back and forth to Sweden, and I can't quite pin an accent on you. I'm not really sure where you are, and if you're a transplant from somewhere else.
I'm Belgian, and I have been Belgian, and I live in Belgium, and I just kind of gained this accent because I had so many people from the US, so I kind of lost my very thick Dutch accent because I speak Dutch natively. And it's just kind of gone now. So I wish I still had it. People like it, so.
Like, because you said you've only been working on this project that you're on for the past, like, about a year and a half, 2 years. It's been a couple of years-ish.
Year and a half since I started-ish. It was like October.
Okay.
2 years ago. No prior experience. I did used to do a little bit of RPG Maker things because I thought that was cute and creative and fun.
Sure.
And then I just kind of ended up with like, hey, I want to do more of this. I want to do it better. I want to be able to do more. I couldn't make the UI work.
Right.
I was like, I can't do it. And then I stumbled on this PlayMaker thing, and I was like, that's cool, that looks easy. And then I started doing it. It wasn't so easy, but you know.
Well, yeah, it's relative, right? It's like, but I imagine coming from RPG Maker, it was still quite a leap, because from what I understand, RPG Maker is supposed to be like super easy.
Yeah, exceptionally easy. You get a few tutorials, and then it's like, oh, you know this forever. It's alright, I guess. I'm well beyond that kind of thing. I can make anything I want to now.
Yeah.
You know, because of this community, I don't really need it. Right. I don't know if it makes much of a difference. I guess maybe it'll just run faster and have more capabilities, but I didn't look into it beyond just kind of a few things here and there.
Sure.
So,
I like that what you just said right now. You're like, I can make anything now. Like, you've definitely passed that threshold. I know the feeling. It's like, even though you're still learning and still growing, it's I don't know, it's sort of like a mental switch that you make when you realize that everything that they've done in games so far, there's not really much that's changing. It's a lot of switching a bool back and forth, changing a number, and looking for something in the scene, you know, looking for data or whatever. I don't expect you to have like a moment where you're like, I can make anything, but do you remember the first time you like thought that? Like, do you remember, like, kind of, like, how recently it was, or just kind of, like, if you had any sort of, just sort of, like, moments of clarity where you're like, oh, actually, like, this, I've learned everything I need to learn, technically, but now I could just do it, I can learn more to, like, do better or faster.
Pretty much, like, last August was, like, when it kind of hit me that I kind of been doing little things. Like, I need an entire turn-based system. You know, I'm going to name drop Broken once, hopefully, and then just kind of like get it over with and be like, that guy is the start of everything, right? I do the turn-based thing, I learn what arrays do, and then I make the turn-based thing. And then it's like, okay, but now that I know how that works, what else do I need to do? I want to do kind of like a real-time combat thing. So I do that, and then it's like, oh, now I have this like one slice of real-time combat. And then I wanted to do like a little mini game when you hit 3 buttons and then follow button prompts, and like you make that little slice, and it's like 15 little slices later you start to think like, wow, I've been making a lot of things, some of which I just have like this idea, and then I just make it, and then I did it, and it looks sloppy and it doesn't perform very well, but it works. It works, you know.
Sure.
And regularly now I just go back, like literally 2 days ago I go back to my code, and it's like, this is old Sarah code, this is disgusting, this is gross, and then I just rework it, and then it doesn't necessarily function better, but it looks better, you know, in PlayMaker.
What are you working on? Tell me about the project you're working on. I know very little about it other than like I've seen videos and screen caps of what looks like sort of this open world RPG.
So RPGs are easy to make, I thought, and then I made one, and then it was hard. But I wanted to try my best to make one, so it started off with, I started with RPG Maker, and that's easy. So I'm just gonna make it in Unity because everything is standing still, and if everything stands still, then it must be easy, right? Because no moving parts except there are a lot of moving parts in a JRPG. So I was just going to make that game because it was easy. But then I was like, I could make this really fun. Growing up, there was this game series called Grandia, right? It's like you move around, you give commands, and then you can interrupt people's commands in turn-based fights. And that was really fun. And then I had someone play it, and I was watching him go through the entire story on the stream. And he was loving it. And I was like, I'm going to make that kind of game. But that's the idea. So you have your turn, you give a command, and then you're casting your spell, your skill, and then enemies can maybe interrupt you while you're casting them. There is a casting time. If you're speedy, then everything goes faster. If you're strong, then they land harder. Right. If you're lucky, that's a secret. That's a secret stat that I'm never gonna say what it does.
Okay.
There's all these kinds of things, and you can kind of like build a really interesting game on that. I think where like you can have a boss that's like really powerful, so he might do a really slow attack that charges up, so you're kind of open to interrupting his attack while he's casting. Or maybe you're trying to heal someone at a critical moment, and then they interrupt you, and it's like, oh damn. So that was really fun, and when I was testing it over and over again, I knew like I've made it, right? The most frustrating thing with turn-based games to me was always, you're roaming around, you're exploring, but then all of a sudden everything stops, and you have to fight this monster or this group of monsters. It's like it interrupts
random
kind of
encounter
like
kind of stuff is what you're talking about?
Yeah, random encounters just ruin it. So I was like, you've got Persona, and they make like this system where it's like you hit your enemy first, so you get in like an initiative. And I thought, that's cool. What if I add a bit of a mini game to it? And then I kind of sort of lost myself and ended up making 4 protagonists, each having like their own kind of style. One just has a gun, the other one has a guitar that he uses and swings at people and plays magical things with. Then we've got like a teleporting greatsword user and a melee fighter, and they all have an element, and you can explore all kinds of possibilities with them. And enemies have weaknesses, so you might be able to cast a spell and exploit their weakness in kind of the overworld. And this is really designed so that your fight in the overworld only lasts maybe 10 seconds, maybe less.
Oh shit, that's so short.
Yeah, so it's really supposed to be fast. So they can knock you out in one hit sometimes. I'm trying to lower it a bit so it's not too crazy. The benefit of roaming around and kind of picking your fights is that like you feel like you're not going to just be pulled out of the world. But that's kind of the core gameplay mechanic, but I didn't really mention like the fact that it's actually supposed to be revolving around kind of your town, and you're supposed to really love your town.
Is that like is the entirety of the game world this town? Does it extend outside of it?
Sort of just your hub.
I see.
So the idea is that you kind of grow and you have like this bond with your town. The loop is, let's pick an adventure, let's go out, let's experience a story, let's do the turn-based thing, come back home, watch the story progress a little bit, and kind of make it to the end.
Right. That's like crazy wholesome and like sweet, but also like, I guess like the first thing that pops into mind is like, I realize a lot of games is about leaving your town and the adventure is sort of like staying gone, and you might come back and, like, I mean, Frodo comes home at the very, very end, but it's about sort of leaving and seeing the rest of the world. How complete would you say the sort of, the visual, all the models and stuff are of your world? Like, how complete is it at this moment?
The enemies are completely incomplete, and the main characters, I've got 2. They're very, very finished, polished. And there's a bunch of 2D art that's like already made, so every 3D model I actually commissioned someone to make them for me specifically so that it feels correct. Yeah, I could never afford like the environments. That's the hardest part. So I have to pay for that like on the Unity Asset Store and just kind of try to make what I can of it without like it feeling like it's just a copy paste.
Yeah. But you can do that. I mean, like, I think a lot of people sort of like underestimate kit bashing and just really being able to like utilize a good set to like especially incorporate with other things, right? Like, I think the sort of like the melting pot of assets that you make is what ends up giving you sort of like a unique atmosphere or cosmetic or whatever it is.
My first kind of approach to this was to just like, do I even know how to make an area that is worth visiting? Right?
Sure.
That was
That's
just
a good
a very
question.
baseline thing.
Yeah.
I work a lot. I work less now, but it's still like 7 hours a day, and I work in weekends some days. So
You're talking about like, are you referring to like a day job right now?
no, this job is my day job. It just
Okay, yeah, that's okay. I do want to talk about this.
Sorry, no, it's cool.
Let's sort this out. So what exactly, how did you get to this point for you to be able to work on it full time? Because it's full time, right? That's what you're telling me?
It is full time,
Yeah.
I'm in my 30s, and I've had a pretty kind of turbulent run at life. You know, I've studied a lot of things. I've been to college for multiple things. I had jobs, and then some really not great jobs, and then jobs that I thought were going to be great, but after a while, I just kind of get, quite frankly, depressed. I've just been bouncing back and forth, not figuring out like what it is that I want in my life. Nothing that I do feels like it's satisfying enough, or it's way too draining. And the first year is maybe okay, but once the second year kicks in, it's horrible. And Unity is like kind of the only thing that makes it so that I can keep doing this, and I'm not even getting paid for this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like on like benefits here, and then just kind of I visit hospitals often enough, and I get a bit of a pass. So I'm trying to use this pass while it lasts to really like focus and work hard and kind of do the one job that I feel like has not drained me completely. But it does drain me. I mean, Unity drains you.
Oh, sure.
It drains you.
Right. It's not like you get it all for all this energy for free.
Absolutely. And sometimes I feel like you can really tell when burnout hits, when you make something and you don't know if it's good. You don't even know if it looks good or sounds good or feels good.
Are you saying like because you don't have like the excitement isn't there or something? Like you make a thing and like the sort of enthusiasm or something?
When you make something and you're new to game dev and you make a cube jump or something, you hit space and it just jumps, you're like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it still feels
And
pretty
now,
good sometimes.
And now I'm at this point where I make very complex skills and it's done, and I'm like, I don't know. Is this good? I don't know. I can't tell. So I have to go and ask my brother, or I have to go and ask my now girlfriend, which is nice. Like, does this look good? Does this feel good? People sometimes need to play things and tell me, because I cannot tell. Like I am just tired, I guess, or I'm just so stuck in this world where I think like people will know what is being kind of taped together, because that's what it is, right? Code is always going to be imperfect. Yeah. And when you kind of find shortcuts, or you find the limits of the system that you make, that feels like weird to you. And you know what the limit is, and you know how you're trying to get around it if you need to. But the player doesn't. The fact that you know that makes it so that like...
Do you think it's the scale of your project? Because like what you're describing to me is pretty big. It sounds pretty huge. And like when you finish something, you're not like taking that moment to sort of like appreciate and celebrate your achievements. And that's because like you're like, oh, check one thing off of the 1,000,000 item list. And it's like, I better get right back to work. Like, do you have that feeling?
I think that's definitely part of it. And the other part would be like, because it's so big, I can't make someone play it. Yeah. This is just like a segment. And if you make 1% of something, then you can't make someone play 1% of something, usually. Right. And this is usually 1% of a component of a game, so... Yeah. It's a bit sad, really, because like a lot of people do ask me like, when is your game going to be done? And I keep thinking, oh no, I hope next year maybe, but I don't think so.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, because you've got your game, and I wishlisted it. Everybody wishlist.
Yeah. Please. Thank you.
It's so cute. I remember when you showed, because I used to hang out way more on the PlayMaker Discord, and I would see you like measuring things in people. You know, I remember you just like, oh, this building is like 5 gentlemen stacked on top of each other or whatever. You know,
the tried and true method.
So cute.
Yeah. Just hearing you say right now specifically, you're like, what did you say? You said like, you can't make somebody play something that's only 1% complete. It's almost like saying you're making a cheeseburger and like you just finished mixing the ketchup. And then you're like, oh, try this ketchup. You know, eat this ketchup. It's like, I can't make you eat ketchup. Like, I need to finish the lettuce and the tomatoes and the meat and the bun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I'm not going to make you try any one of these things individually. Yeah, that could be a hard feeling to wrestle with. I'll just say, like, you know, that's something that I think with like large scale projects, even when we're diligent, even when we're getting things done, for me at least, it could feel a little demotivating to not, what I always call like pressing the play button. You know, like today feels like a good day if I got to press that play button, you know, but there's so many days where it's just like, you know, I'm like designing huge, crazy, complex FSMs, a million of them. And then the end of the day goes like, you know, 10 hours goes by and I never got to press the play button. You know, I never got to see what that actually does. And it's like, I have faith that it's all going to work and shit, like at the end, but like, it could feel a little bit like burnout, I think, because you want to see things happen.
This is the best job for sure, because I've met so many people, you know. I've briefly had contact with someone who ends up having a game that gets streamed by like, you know, this many people, and it gets seen by millions of others. And you can kind of start saying like, oh yeah, I know this guy. He talked to me like 2 sentences in the Unity Discord once. Right. You know,
right. It does feel like the world kind of feels smaller. It's like you're almost like you're rubbing elbows with sort of everybody, like the people who just started and the people who are experiencing like massive amounts of success. It's like we're all in the same. It feels like we're in the same room together.
Yeah, and people are so helpful, you know, and this is generally very affordable. I mean, maybe Unity assets aren't, but learning how to use Unity.
Right, all things
and
considered.
If you're so inclined, you can use Blender or you can make your pixel art. You do you.
Yep.
That's all free. That's mostly free, you know.
Yeah.
So, and there's like a wealth of people who are willing to help you and figure it out for you, and you just poke them and they'll be nice to you. Right. I just don't have the energy to poke around on, you know, any Discord or anything. I don't notice this text. It flies by, and I've got like 5 Discords, and then I've got a personal life, and I need to move countries at some point again.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, I do this job for a very long time every day. It used to be like up to 12 hours. Now I've scaled it back a lot. And I still feel like I don't always dedicate enough time to people and the outdoors around me. So, yeah, this Goomba here, he's feeling neglected, you know. I don't even look at him half the time.
Look at those doe eyes just looking up at you like, when will you listen to me? When will you play with me?
Exactly, you know, when?
Yeah.
When, Sarah? When? You know.
I'm glad you're dialing it back, to be honest. Like that's always nice to hear. And yeah, it's like you're stuck in between that shitty place of like, I need to dial it back because life is more than just making my game. But also like you go to sleep going like, shit, I didn't give enough time to my game today. And it's like, yeah, I think that feeling is better. I'd rather feel the shit, I didn't give my game enough time, as opposed to the, oh, I should have been with the people I love kind of thing. You know, like... Yeah.
Around Christmas this last time, I just kind of decided to do very little for a month. And that's when I met my current girlfriend.
Oh,
So, and I met a lot of nice people. And you know, by playing video games, I ended up meeting someone who likes to do marketing. So now I get to learn about marketing from someone who's kind of in the business of doing marketing, hopefully. People are excited about meeting someone who makes video games. Yeah, just don't be the kind of person who enters a room and goes, I'm a game dev, I just make all these things. Don't do that. That's a very douchey thing to do. Never do that, please.
When people ask me like about the things that I'm working on, I know it's so easy for me to just jump in and start rambling about my game. And I was just recently at a dinner party. So I just met Alex Chules and Aaron K in real life. That's the PlayMaker team, you know? So like I've been working with them for years now, but like this is the first time I've met them in person because they came out to Los Angeles. We were at dinner with some friends, you know, of course, like PlayMaker and game dev stuff comes up, and then so does my game. We start talking about Memories of a Spy, and like I'm more than happy to talk about it briefly. But then people start asking like a lot of questions, you know, and they start asking, and the people we were around, they were like, it was a sharp crowd. Like they have really sort of like, they were very stimulating people, right? They had questions that I was like, oh shit, like those are good questions, and it makes me talk more about the game. And like I kept having to just like be very conscious of like, oh, don't go into this too far, you know, like don't go too into this. I don't want to be that guy who's like controlling the conversation about only my interests, you know. It's like, oh, tonight we're only going to talk about my video game and the spy fiction genre, like like, you know, oh, tell me about your game. Okay, let's start with everything and then just zoom in on like every segment and every little. It's insane. There's so much to talk about. You could talk about like the animation stuff, you know, and I use UMotion. It's really, really worthwhile, you know, very good. You animate 3D characters so well with it. Fix animations, you know. But you could talk about UMotion and like, oh, do you know the difference between inverse kinematics and like forward kinematics? And you know, you could be that kind of person. And it is hard not to be that kind of person. Right.
You know?
It's a fun thing to talk about.
It is. It is fucking fascinating. Yeah. I sit there and I think like, you know, I want to walk up to a stranger and on the street and just shake them and be like, you know, what is the difference between FK and IK? You know, what's the difference? You know, or you want to know about my templates? You know, you want to
see the started on templates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that. So you're kind of joking about doing this bit about going to strangers in the street and shaking them and telling them about your templates. I hang out on Twitter and like find people who are talking about their like sloppy or messy or complicated FSMs, and I just start rambling about templates. There's like an aversion that people have. Like they hear about templates and they're just like, like I don't think my game needs that, or like, it sounds a little too complicated. And it's like, no, you don't get it. Not only are they like crazy easy, but I'm looking at everything you're making, and that's way more convoluted and complex than if you just would have used a template. It's like,
exactly.
What do you, like, please just look at it.
Just find out I have 250 templates, unique templates in my game. Use it. It is necessary.
Yeah.
I use Finish FSM like 1,000 times now. Right. Like you see it in your little history, you know, like, you know, most recently used, it's like 1,000 Finish FSM. That's like, templates are amazing. Like I once ages ago put a little list of things to learn. It's like arrays and templates are part of it. Those are two of the list. Because it's so important. That like don't destroy unload is kind of part of it, you know, like learn how to manage your stuff in one like manager.
Right.
Like that kind of stuff. Know these things and you can make anything. It's always the same thing, because every game is going to be using templates like this. Every game is going to be using array. Every good game uses arrays or hash tables or both.
Right.
I would love to see a game that's not made by someone who knows how to do arrays.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be good.
Yeah. That would drive me crazy to be like, if somebody said like, you have to make, I don't know, Flappy Bird, like without arrays or templates, even then I would be like fine, like I can. But like, you know, can I walk down the street with like a backpack full of rocks? Yeah. Why would I do that? Like,
exactly.
Okay, so again, we're getting a little too far off into the nerdy zone here. Always, I have to remind people the name of the show. It's The Beating Heart Behind, but we always end up as the brain in the jar behind. And so I need to bring this around. We're gonna talk about you being a kid and the games you played growing up, and sort of like how that's changed over the years. So, how far back does that go? What are some of your earliest memories of like playing games?
When I was little, I have two older brothers. They're like 3 years and 6 years older than me. So the youngest. we would play outside, and our mom would always get pissed at us, mad at us, not drunk, British people, if we were like to get our clothes dirty. And we're kids.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
But we had a Nintendo, like a basic NES, from the 80s in my oldest brother's room. So if you play on that, you don't get yelled at. So, we want to go outside and play, and then we do, but then we come home, or we kind of second guess it, and it's like, let's play Mario. Because it was Mario with Duck Hunt, and you get to shoot the screen, all that fun stuff.
Right.
So that's that's how I kind of knew about video games. I did not care about video games until my brothers kept pushing it at me, like, no, you gotta play this, and then it's like, okay, and then I ended up playing them the most. So I never really stopped after that. It was a lifelong addiction, I'm afraid. Every time I go somewhere, I kind of have that feeling of like, but when I get home later, I just want to play video games.
Right.
We didn't have a Super Nintendo. We didn't have anything else. It was like Nintendo Entertainment System, and then like PlayStation 1. Like that was the gap,
That's kind of crazy. That's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, and then we would miss out on all these games. So like we'd have friends or friends of friends, and it's like, hey, you have a Nintendo. Do you want to trade it for my PlayStation for like a week or two, or for the PlayStation, whatever. Or we trade our PlayStation for what was it? A Sega Genesis, I guess is the American version. And then, the PlayStation 2 released, and that was like, I think for a lot of people, this is just like such a groundbreaking console. I had one of those, and I loved it because it was also a DVD player. So
that's true.
That was
Damn, I
exciting.
forgot. We used to watch movies on that thing.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
Huh.
And then eventually the PS3 came out, and I skipped that because I had a PC, and then I started doing PC gaming. And so it's a lifelong thing. Every time I'm exhausted or feel sick or I just don't want to do anything, I play games. Every time I want to socialize with someone, I make them play video games with me because that's easier. I'll play Stardew, or I'll play. Currently, I'm very, very always a big fan of Apex Legends. I just shoot people all day long. Shoot. It's so good. You do Unity, and then you take it out on other people, and I adore it. But you can't have much of a conversation when you're playing Apex. I'm starting to notice. There's always someone showing up.
You have to pick and choose. Definitely depending on what you're trying to like get out of like this hangout time. Apex probably not a good one. I find like the more open worldy games great for that, for hanging out with your friends. Because if you're just chopping wood and collecting resources, it's like going for a hike with your friends. You end up making a lot of small talk, and then it occasionally gets interrupted by like cannibals or whatever. We've been playing The Forest, so
okay, that makes sense. I think my girlfriend likes that game. I should ask. She's really big into these crafter games, like survival crafter games.
Right. Have you ever played the New Forest or any of the Forests?
No, I didn't play that one. I skipped it. Sorry, I'm a peasant.
Those are good ones to spend time with people in, because they are like, I don't know if your tastes align with it necessarily, but like the bonus is that the multiplayer in it is a good hangout with the homies. So or significant other. It's just those two. I'm trying to think of like what other games like that. Minecraft, Deep Rock Galactic. What games do you find are good for like hanging out with people in?
But I did mention Stardew, which is pretty nice. It's wholesome. It's relaxing. My girlfriend bought this game called Wobbly Life. It's stupid.
Sounds really familiar.
It's just completely stupid.
Wobbly Life.
You're just like this little person, and you're yellow, and your mouse buttons control your arms, and they're very sticky.
See, this looks cute.
You have to earn money. It's not even got that many objectives as like an overarching game. You just got to do odd jobs and earn money. You'll laugh your ass off.
It looks
if you
really
play
funny.
That game.
Because it's one of those like wonky physics kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all about how bad and wonky the physics are, and it's so good. It's so funny. You gotta sucker someone into playing it with you. That should be your first experience. Never play a game alone. always play with someone, and then
Yeah.
you will now recover. You know,
Right.
it's so good.
There's definitely games like that where it's like, I tell people, it's like, there is a single player thing, but like the real fun of it is like having a laugh with the group of friends.
For sure. I mean, that's most games are like that. I think, you know. I hate that I'm making a single player game because my dream game, one of my most favorite games of all time, was a Sega game, and that was like Streets of Rage 2.
Oh,
you know? Yeah, and now they have Streets of Rage 4, and I played that to death. I got all the achievements on it. I hurt my hands. They cramp so much when I play that game.
Right.
Because I go over and over and over and over again. I just cannot get enough of it. The music is amazing. The co-op is fun. But honestly, I mostly play it alone almost 99% of the time, I'm pretty sure. Because I'm annoying. I get hit and it's like, damn it, I need to start over again because my combo was really good, because you get more and more points. Online games are just, for me, more fun than single player ones. But I'm not going to start making an online game because that is really complicated. So I need time to figure out how these things work.
This will kind of help us lead into the question that I wanted to get to. It's the question I ask everybody about the whole, like, your emotional experiences in games and like crying in video games. But let's lead up to that by first sort of talking about what you said a moment ago about games that you play with your friends are more fun. And so I want to sort of distinguish like fun, right? You're having fun with your games with friends versus like, I guess it's fun, but what's the single player experience like? Because I imagine there are single player games where like the value of it, what was good about it, and why it stuck with you might have nothing to do with like it couldn't be a 2-player game, right? Aren't there single player games that you play? So like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, amazing. I grew up especially with Final Fantasy games.
There you go.
So which, I don't know, like younger people don't necessarily understand this. When I grew up, I was, PlayStation was like newly released, in 1995 or whatever. And they also made Final Fantasy VII, right? That game was the most groundbreaking game in its time. And it was groundbreaking because it was, where I lived, pretty much the only game ever to be like advertised openly on TV, on billboards, bus stops. And it was like this multi-million, maybe billion-dollar thing that they did. This new technology. It was 3D. It was super exciting, full motion videos and stuff like that.
Right.
And that really sold the idea of like turn-based games to me, which is what I'm making. So that stuck with me. And then I actually ended up going back and playing all the Final Fantasy games up until 10.
Oh shit.
And yeah, and probably my favorite one is gonna be 9. That one's designed to destroy you emotionally. It's so cutesy on the outside. It's so pretty. It's so nice. It's so like, oh, this is for kids.
Sure.
And then you see like this whole story is like they destroy all these characters like emotionally, kind of. They all have to deal with like these terrible themes that other fantasy genres kind of like. They just kind of gloss over. It's like, yeah, that guy got killed. Okay, whatever. But then you meet all these characters and they translate it so well. Everybody has really strong personality. And all of it was, you read it, because there was no spoken dialogue for that game.
Right.
But what they did was they had a really good composer, legendary composer, really.
Yep.
And he wrote musical themes that also played in a lot of these like full motion videos that really tried to convey kind of the emotion that everybody was feeling. And I remember there's so many times where like it's like, oh my god, this is so bad, and you hear the music and it's like, it's so much worse. You feel so bad, or you feel the weight of it because of the composer. And as a kid, you play it, and it's like, oh yeah, this is cool, I'm using fire spells, whatever. The whole story goes over your head. It's There's no story. You just hit X the whole time. So you skip everything. And then as an adult, you're like, but why? Why would you do this to your characters? Why would you? and yeah, that sticks with you, you know. I actually want to play that again. So there's a couple of those games. Final Fantasy was pretty good. So there are like a ton of single player games that catch you, or sometimes those like just one more turn style games. They get you.
So your experience then with like Final Fantasy sounds like them being single player games, you're definitely finding an experience that isn't so translatable probably during multiplayer games, right? Because usually with multiplayer games, It is like I don't want to limit the sort of like definition of fun, but like when you're playing with your friends, that's like fun. And maybe the things that we're playing by ourselves aren't necessarily like, they can be fun, but they're more sort of also about like an emotional experience.
For sure.
And so I'm wondering, like, of any of those types of games, or honestly, even with multiplayer games, because I have had pretty strong emotional experiences with multiplayer games, like super strong emotional experiences. What have been sort of like the peak for you in terms of like strong emotional reaction out of any kind of gaming experience? And lastly, just sort of like to tack onto that, like if you cried during it, that's what I'm looking for, that type of reaction. But I'm also interested to hear other experiences you may have had.
And it had this like game called Streets of Rage. I couldn't really, I couldn't beat it. I thought it was cool because the music was really exceptional. As an adult, I got my own thing, my own Sega with it, and I ended up, and I got through the first level, but I lost a life, and then I got through the second level, and then I died completely, and then I try again and again. I'd get further every time, and the feeling I got for like finally beating that game after so much time was really good. I remember being like on the last boss of my last life, no continues, a sliver of health left. I was sweating. The first time. I remember how much of a victory that was to me. I was beating like this thing that I could never beat. And then I played the second one, and the second one was better. And I never played the second one growing up. But then I played that one and it was even better, and I had the same exact experience, like you do a few levels, you die, you suck, right? You go back into it, you get better and better, and again, the sweating, the final life, the everything, so that's why I'm such a big fan of Streets of Rage 4, because it's like, that experience that I had twice on those two games, and it's genuinely like my preferred beat 'em up kind of game now. So that stuck with me. Like you asked me that and was like, it's got to be Streets of Rage. It always has to be Streets of Rage.
That's interesting. That is a very fascinating answer for that. Did not expect that to.
But the story of Final Fantasy IX really is like something that sticks with you, and it's like sweet. It's like kind of like sad. It's very sad. It's very often very sad. There is one that made me cry. So 9 didn't, but it should. Okay, I'm just emotionally stunted. I'm broken. Don't worry, it's a me problem. If you cry at 9, it's fine. Okay. This is funny because it's also a Final Fantasy game, but it's not a turn-based one. It's Crisis Core, but I don't want to give it away. Okay, but it's the very ending of it. Okay, they force you to play as the main character while they're going through some shit. And like they do all kinds of things with the game mechanics to support it, and you feel it while you're playing. That like your character isn't really like reacting as they should anymore, and you're starting to feel like, oh no, don't do this, don't do this. And it was on a PSP, so I was like my tears, they were just like dropping onto my PSP screen. And my dad came in at that time and was looking around, and it was like he didn't really notice that I was like emotional, and he just did his thing like completely oblivious, and I was like, damn it, I was having a moment here, I'm crying, let me. So I don't even get to have that experience,
You had it. You just didn't get the full sort of drawn out catharsis of it, but you got there. You had living proof, at least. You can go to your grave being like, that. I had an intense ass experience.
It's an absolute pleasure. I love talking about myself the whole time. So don't.
Well, I love talking about you too. That's why we're here.
cool. I could do this for 3 more hours. I would not have had a problem with it. That sounds very narcissistic, but you're very easy to talk to. So it's.
I'm glad, and you as well. Very easy to talk to. And I think we should actually do a follow-up. We should do a round 2. Let's say when the game is complete, or when it's about to be complete, or something like that.
We'll do a follow-up. 12 years. Yeah.
Right.